Welcome everyone, there we go, to Couch Potato Diary. Technical problems, what technical problems? My name is Peter Klein, thank you very much for tuning in today, and 99% of you who are seeing this right now have no idea what just happened. My name is Peter Klein, thank you guys very much for hanging out today. We have a jammed up show, a lot to talk about from a very busy weekend, as most of these Monday shows are as we head toward the Super Bowl. So just an unbelievable weekend. We'll start with a crazy time in the National Football League. The Toronto Blue Jays actually signed a guy, just not the guy we were kind of hinting at when we went off the air on Friday. Plus, boxing's pound for pound king is back. The UFC's pound for pound king just whooped that ass on the weekend. And it is a very busy week in the world of the WWE. So a ton to get to on the show today. As always, we are presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca for some great Calgary swag. We got the Cannons hat going on right there. We got awesome sweater up there. It's sweater weather right now, so you definitely want to check that out. Plus, this, as always, fueled by Swift Energy. Check out swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime to get 25% off when you use that. So, let's get right into it, hey? We got some football to talk about, so let's do that, shall we? All right, so the NFL is now down to its Final Four. Just not exactly the Final Four we thought we were going to have after what was, I cannot say this enough, an incredible weekend in the National Football League. Let's jump right in, and we're going to go reverse chronologically right now. We will start with the Buffalo Bills at home taking on the Baltimore Ravens and winning what was exactly the classic that we thought it was going to be. Maybe not necessarily the 55-point total or anything like that a lot of people had on it, but still a big game for the Buffalo Bills and for the Baltimore Ravens. Just an unbelievably, incredibly entertaining game. And really, this game was a tale of two games, I think. In that first half, it was Buffalo stepping up and really putting their foot on the gas and really dominating in this game. I thought they were just dominant was the only way to describe it in that first half. Allen was making all the throws that he needed to. The run game was really getting down to business. And talked about it on here, talked about it on Sportsnet 960 for those of you who live out here in Calgary. There was a lot of talk about Baltimore's defense and how improved it was coming off of what they did at the back part of the regular season, but they hadn't faced an offense quite like the Buffalo Bills. And in the first half, boy, howdy did it show, because they just absolutely were able to run all over them and kind of get anything that they wanted to, and picking up some really big plays. Then in the second half, Buffalo offensively does just enough to get the job done. You have Cook, who is going out there. I thought he was great. I thought all the running backs, really, for Buffalo stepped up. Johnson with a couple of tough runs. Davis with a really good run over on the left side there. The speed that he showed was really impressive. But Cook, I tweeted this out the other day. I think Cook might be my favorite running back to watch in the National Football League. He is just a blast to see go out there and get the job done. I thoroughly enjoy watching him play. He can run with great speed. He finishes every run really, really hard, and he has these subtle little cuts that just open up angles for him and get things going. To me, he is the perfect package as a running back. And then defensively, again, they were fantastic in the first half and really shut some things down, but then they got run all over in the second half of this game. So that's where you get kind of the tale of two games here, where the first half, it was all Buffalo. And then in the second half, it really felt like they were hanging on. Obviously, I'm burying the lead a little bit here. The big story from this game was the fourth quarter, and specifically the two-point conversion. They march down, they're able to get a touchdown with about 1:40 to go, and on the two-point conversion, Lamar Jackson rolls right, throws it to Mark Andrews, who bobbles it and drops it. and the game is over, and the Buffalo Bills are off to the conference championship. I didn't realize this. Just the second time, I think they said, since like 1994. You just figure that this team has been around it so often that it's like, oh yeah, no, they've been to the conference championship with these guys. Yeah, of course they have. And it's okay, well, no, that one they lost in the divisional round, and then that one they lost in the divisional round, and oh, that one, well, also in the divisional round. So that this was, I mean, it was a huge step for these guys, but for Baltimore, it is absolute heartbreak. I felt good about the reaction that you saw from people where it's that this wasn't on Lamar Jackson, because it wasn't. I thought he played really, really well. Look, breaking news: Lamar Jackson is a very good running quarterback, but he is, and he showed that again in this game. The speed, it's like he glides out there, and I mean, part of it he might have been, given how icy that field was at various different points. But then you look at the turnovers that they have, and it doesn't really feel like any of them are his fault, right? Like there is a bit of a bobble the high snap, he goes back, it's a fumble. The interception, that was a bad throw. That one was a really bad throw. And when you watch it initially, it's like, oh my God, what are you doing? But you watch the replay, Milano is in his face. And by the way, Milano played a tremendous football game. That's probably the game of his career, how well he played. Hey, Deeds, how's it going? He played phenomenal at the linebacker spot in spying Lamar Jackson. There was one time he kind of got caught up in the wash, and they were talking about it on the broadcast. And also, I thought Romo had an amazing day calling that game. But they're rolling Jackson over to the right side, and Romo was saying, like, the design of this play is to draw Milano in and kind of get it just caught up in the wash a little bit so Lamar can get outside the contain and go to the outside and run. And they did that perfectly. Milano just comes up a little bit too close, gets caught up in a couple of the blocks there, and while no offensive lineman gets a hand on him, it's enough to let Lamar get that edge, get the outside, and run. But after that, Milano was perfect, and he forces that interception, and then, like, the Andrews fumble, he just gets the ball punched out, and that's going to happen with a very slippery ball. But that play, it's not on Lamar. I think Sean King, former quarterback, I associate him with the Bucks. I'm sure he played for other teams. But he was saying, like, oh, well, Lamar put it behind him. That was the only one that I saw that was saying that Lamar had anything to do with losing that game. I thought Lamar Jackson was excellent, and that's just, it's a drop. And it's an unfortunate drop, but it's just a drop. And they had a couple plays that they just didn't quite execute very, very well, and that ends up costing them. They lose a 2-point game, so obviously that was going to be it. For Mark Andrews, unfortunately, this is going to be a legacy-defining moment, I think, for him, because, like, he is, I think, an excellent tight end, but this was the biggest moment of his career, and it didn't work. In heartbreaking fashion, it didn't work. So it's something that is going to be associated with this guy for the rest of his career, which again is too bad. And for Lamar now, like, this felt like the start of a special year, right? Or this felt like it could have been a special year, right? And you look at how close they were at the beginning of the season by a toenail, losing to Kansas City, and now in this one, a bubble, and who knows, right? Like, you're giving Mahomes the ball back, or not, sorry, Mahomes. You're giving Allen the ball back with a minute and a half to go, only needing to get in a field goal range. I don't know if they would have won anyway. To be perfectly frank, I don't think it would have gone their way. The defense played better in the second half, but Josh Allen only needing, like, presuming he's starting from the 30, Josh Allen only needing to get 20, 30 yards in a minute and a half, and I think they had all their timeouts. That probably wasn't going to happen. So I do think that there is going to be a lot said about this one, but for Baltimore, like I said, like, this felt like the perfect season, where you have just a couple misses, but, like, Lamar and Henry, it fit perfectly. And you do wonder about, like, Derrick Henry falling off, although it certainly didn't seem like there was one. I think you could really see they were missing a top receiver in this game. But, I mean, this offense, everything was clicking so well, and it just comes up one or two plays short again for this team. And it just shows you the margin of error is so small, especially in this AFC right now, where you have these three titans at the top with, not the literal titans, but with the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Bills. And honestly, like, if Cincinnati has an average defense, you're putting the Bengals in there, and it's going to be so hard for teams like the Texans, who we'll talk about it a little bit later on, and teams like the Broncos or the Chargers or any of these other teams, Steelers, to try to break through into that because of the high level that these teams are playing at. Like, you watch that game and you're Pittsburgh. Are you saying like, oh man, you know what? We're real close. No. Watching that, like I said, like Cincinnati, maybe because of how well Joe Burrow is playing, but like Bo Nix, an incredible season. Are you close to that? No. And that's not a knock against these teams. That is just the extreme high level that we have with these three teams atop the AFC. But it is the Bills who are able to get it through and pick things up. For Baltimore defensively, they stepped up in the second half. They played very well. They tried to force Josh Allen to kind of beat them and really did a great job of limiting the run. And I thought Buffalo took their foot off the gas pedal a little bit there and shouldn't have. And this is a couple weeks in a row that I've been a little bit concerned about the decision-making of this team. But when you look at play style offensively. Last week it was against Denver where they played a offensive style that made it feel like they only thought they could win a close game. And in this one, it felt like, okay, we're up by 11. Let's just run the clock down, drag it out. Let's limit these possessions. And then they got very predictable in running the football. They got blown up. And then it's all of a sudden 3rd and 8 against a pretty good defense and they couldn't capitalize. So it's a tough blow, but it's a tough blow for Baltimore, and for Buffalo, it is, I think, a little bit to learn from. But overall, this was a wild game. It was so much fun. It is I think, not legacy defining, because for Josh Allen, that now I think can only come in the last 2 games of the season, the conference championship and the Super Bowl. But this was just a real reinforcement of how good he is. And when you look at how well both these offenses played, and Khalil Shakir is the best wide receiver in the game, it's really quite something. And it's honestly kind of something I noticed, or noted anyway. You look at this Final Four now, Kansas City, obviously, Hall of Fame tight end helps. But for the wide receivers, like, there isn't really. Worthy made a couple of good catches. But like they don't really have a number one. The Bills thought they traded for a number one in Amari Cooper, but he isn't that with this team. Shakir and Coleman are fine, but they don't really have a number one. Washington, McLaurin plays like a number one, but they don't really have a solid number two. And Philadelphia is the outlier in this. A.J. Brown is a beast, but they don't really use him all that much. Like, it's really interesting to see how these teams are built and working their way through the postseason right now. But now it'll be the Bills facing the Kansas City Chiefs for the 4th time since 2020. We're going to have a lot on these games coming up as the week rolls on. Deeds, I do see the Texans question. So I will get to that in a little bit. Sorry, I just froze there for a second. Moving on. Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Los Angeles Rams. And another game where my first note is, what a game. This was so much fun to watch. Again, both these teams having to deal with the elements and figure it out. And neutral site, who knows, right? Like, domed stadium, who knows how this game plays out. I am kicking myself that I used this one as my underdog pick on radio out here and not the Lions one. I think I felt a little bit more... this one was more vibes and more eye test and all of that. And the other one was a bit more of, no, I think, just matchup wise, it's a really tough one. And so I should have gone with that one instead. But either way, we were very close on this one. And it ends up, from a today's ticket standpoint, all of them were very, very close to the spread. So this is where we talk about line shopping. It gets very interesting because this one was very close, basically right at the number, depending on what you're looking at. But it's another game in a row where the Philadelphia Eagles had a chance to really put a game away, and they just don't do it. And it ends up being a grind, and it's a one-possession game with the other team having the ball at the 21-yard line with under a minute to go and a chance to win the game. They just... I'm not saying they played with their food a little bit. I don't think this offense is quite clicking, and you can talk about Hurts, you can talk about whoever, but this offense is not clicking in a way that just puts teams away, and it lets them hang around in these spots, and so I have some concerns about that going forward. Credit the Rams. They gave it everything they had. It wasn't quite enough, and I think the elements really did get to them in this game. I did kind of think that was going to be a bit of an overblown storyline considering Matthew Stafford played the first 3/4 of his career with the Detroit Lions. And yes, they play indoors, but Chicago doesn't and Green Bay doesn't. So he has played outdoor games in very, very cold weather before, but it clearly affected the rest of the team. And it clearly affected him too. There was just, it was not a picture perfect game from them by any stretch of the imagination. On the Philadelphia side, Barkley and this offensive line was spectacular. And that was the big difference, right? Like it was the offensive line making some holes for Saquon Barkley to bust his way through and pick up those really big plays. And that was it. And that's why you do go out and get like, oh, well, every running back's the same. It's like, but they're not. And when you get a special one, which Saquon Barkley is, which Derrick Henry is, and now that goes against the argument because now they're not playing anymore. But you get that kind of special guy and you get a game breaker. It's why I've always questioned this. Oh, well, like every running back's the same. Don't spend on that one. And no, like don't give Saquon Barkley $50 million. But I personally feel like I would just rather have as many game breakers and difference makers on the football field as I possibly could. And Barkley is obviously that. And he was, again, in this game, a couple of big runs, and the last one really does end up sealing the deal in this particular game. The other part of it, and I'm being harsh on this Philadelphia offense right now, Jalen Hurts was limited in this game offensively, and it very much showed. He had a bit of a knee thing. And so there was quite a limitation there. And the Rams... The Rams defense was not great in this particular game, which is why I'm being a little bit hard on Philadelphia. But they really sold out to stop the run. And we'll talk a bit more in depth about the Rams defense in a second, but they sold out to stop the run, but they sold out to stop the middle run. And then you go outside at all and it's just boom, gone for days. And the safety's taking bad routes and it's just all over the place bad. So an interesting game. But another one where Saquon Barkley and this offensive line really do shine through. Defensively for the Eagles, the interior of the defensive line continues to be amazing. Jalen Carter was great. There were times, like Quinyon Mitchell going down early in this game, I thought they really missed him, although Rodgers does make a couple of good plays, but they missed him. You had Burks in for Dean. He played fine, but Dean would have been better. And there were a couple of those passes over the middle that I think Dean may have been able to help out on, and a couple of those Kyron Williams runs that I think they would have been able to help on a little bit earlier in this game. But over on the Rams side, this was an issue with the offensive line. They, especially on the interior. And again, you're facing Jalen Carter, but it's just like you're letting Carter come right through unblocked. And there is just a hand in Stafford's face all the time. And he is not a quarterback where, oh, there's a hand in my face, better get to the outside. He had that scramble run. They said he had 3 scrambles all season. He's just not that guy. And so, yes, obviously, the edge tackle, like the left and right tackle, those are so important for everything, right? Because if there's guys coming around, you're back in the pocket, you get just blammed. But for a guy like Matthew Stafford, who isn't going to roll out of the pocket and isn't going to create those opportunities, you need that interior offensive line to not have that hand in the face every single time. And that just, it felt like that's what it was. They were not able to get anything going in the interior of that offensive line. And it really, I think, was the big difference in this game. And then they kind of stall out until they get going with the hurry up. And that was the Collinsworth game, right? Yeah. So Collinsworth is talking about how maybe they should have gone to that a little bit sooner. And I would tend to agree with that. But I do think that there is a little bit of that, like the success, that they were having with the hurry up. They were also having it when they were up by 13 with 4 minutes left. And Deeds asking in the chat, did the Rams maybe expose a weakness in the Eagles by playing at pace? The Eagles defense seemed to struggle playing against the no huddle. I will say just in general, because it's not done in the NFL as much anymore, like Chip Kelly tried it for a little bit with that Michael Vick team. Right, that was them? Yeah, they had Vic and Mariota, and it was the dream team. They tried that, and it didn't really work. And so teams don't really go no huddle until they absolutely have to. But defenses aren't really used to it. So I do think that there is a bit of a weakness there. I don't think it is particular to the Eagles, though. I just think if you did that against any defense right now, they wouldn't be expecting it, and they wouldn't really be ready for it, because not a lot of teams do it until there's a couple of minutes left in the games here. And another part of why I thought it was successful again it's a 13-point lead with 4 minutes left. So the defense, they're not going to give you Cooper Kupp deep down the right sideline for a touchdown. They're going to keep everything in front of them and just let you kind of dink and dunk your way through. And that's where the Rams started to have some success. Now, then it's a 6-point game, and it didn't work quite as well, but then you get a couple of chunk plays, and it moved down there a little bit more. So I do think there is a weakness there. I think if you're going to try it, Washington being the team to do it makes all the sense in the world, right? Like Jaden Daniels with McLaurin and get both running backs out there, Robinson and Eckler, with a McLaurin and a Zacchaeus and then Ertz. Are we at too many people? I don't think we're at too many people yet. But either way, you get all those guys out there and run just a hurry up. You could do some real damage against Philadelphia. So if you wanted to, for a week, just run a college-style offense, and we're just going to go. I think that would be... It would certainly be something to try if you're on the Washington side. The one part about the 2-minute offense that I didn't like from the Rams, that second go-around, they're obviously, like, it's late in the game. You need a couple of big chunks to really get this thing going. But I really thought with the success they had with that hurry-up offense, like you said, Deeds, I think the one thing that you need to really get that going is a quick drive starter. And instead, they had a couple of medium depth shots that didn't work. Then all of a sudden you're in 3rd and 10 and you're in a tough situation. And now they were able to convert it and move it down the field. But I thought it would have been a little bit more successful. Just a quick little wide receiver screen to Kupp. Even if it's for a yard, you're at least, okay, we've got it. We're in bounds. We're moving. Let's go. And let's pick up this pace and let's just drive it on them. You need... To have, I think, a successful no huddle, you need to have that first pass be a completed one so you can just start really ramming it down their throat. Before that, the issue became they didn't trust, it didn't seem, anyone to catch the football for them. And when they did catch it, it was, oh, okay, here we go. They would start to roll. But in the second half, mostly, until those final 4 minutes, it was let's run, and then let's see if we can pass for whatever. And the Eagles picked up on it and just started blowing that up. And so for a second there, the offense just had nothing going because they didn't trust Nakua to make the catches in the snow. They didn't trust Higbee to make all of those catches, or Kupp to make all those catches, or Robinson, because all of them had some big plays, but some big drops. I guess Kupp didn't really have a big drop. They just didn't go to him as much for whatever reason. But all of them were having some success just squeezing that thing. And that's where they really started to kind of fall off a little bit and start to fall behind in that game. Not being able to get anything on that first possession, I think, was a bit of that first possession of the second half, was a real killer. Okay, here we go. Let's end. It's a 3-and-out. It's well, shit. And Collinsworth said on the broadcast, this is the best weather they're going to have. And to not get anything out of this is a real downer. And it just felt like they had to scratch and claw for everything they had, again, until that no-huddle offense in the fourth quarter. Like I said before, their guy, Nakua and Robinson, all came up with some big plays, but some really bad drops as well. On the defensive side, I took a note of it early on. I was watching Behind, so I wanted to tweet this out. But it felt like, and I think it was Simmons making this comparison about someone else a couple of weeks ago, but this felt like Tecmo Super Bowl, where you had to, if you didn't guess the play right exactly, they were fucked. Right? That's just how bad this defense was and how good the offensive line for the Eagles was. If they had to sell out to stop one thing. They did not have enough playmakers on the defensive side of the football, especially then when Fisk goes out. They didn't have enough playmakers on the defensive side, aside from Verse, really, to be able to stop multiple things. It's okay, no, we are stopping Saquon Barkley, and you're going to just jam everyone down there and try to stop that. And oh, hey, there goes Jalen Hurts around the outside, and around the outside, and he goes for a touchdown. And well, okay. Well, let's try to maybe, okay, let's sell out and let's make sure we don't do that. And okay, there goes Saquon Barkley and he's gone for a touchdown. Okay, well, let's really bottle things up and try to stop that run game a little bit as well. And oh, what's that? Oh, they just swung it out to Saquon Barkley. Now he's making a play. And oh, hey, there's Dallas Goedert wide open down the field. They made some improvements. And I think there's a lot to get excited about. They made some improvements, but they have such a limited defense that they really could only stop one thing at a time. And they had to guess what that one thing was going to be. And if they guessed wrong, it ended up in really big plays. The one part of it, though, is they did guess right a lot. They were able to assign aside from 3 gigantic runs, it did feel like they were able to limit this defense. They just got burned by the big plays in this game. But the one thing for the Rams that I think you feel comfortable about, like Nakua is young. Kyron Williams was a great player in this game, and he's young. Obviously, the quarterback ain't, but he's still good enough that he can get these guys the ball. And then on the defensive side, it just felt like every time anyone was making a play, it was, oh, and that's the rookie out of here. Oh, that's the rookie out of here. That's the rookie out of here. He's a rookie. That guy's a rookie. It was just so many rookies stepping up and making plays. They have a young foundation built on that defense. I think it's going to be a team that's hanging around this for a very long time, as long as Matthew Stafford and then whoever the next quarterback is are able to get things figured out. That was the story from Sunday. But what about the games that happened on Saturday? Swig of water for the working man. Salute. Sorry, you could probably hear that I was coughing there a little bit. We move on. Washington taking on the Detroit Lions in what was the upset of the weekend. And if you follow me on TikTok, at Primetime Klein, or I guess anywhere on social media, I was putting the clip out from the upset special, where like if Washington's going to do it, this is how they're going to do it. And it played out almost exactly like that. I will say, just to toot my own horn for a second, I do feel like a lot of like, okay, well, this is how this game is going to go. A lot of those breakdowns were actually a little bit bang on this week. Feel like it did all right with those. And I mean, it ended up not, again, being overly like, oh, nailed that one. Like we had to sweat out a bunch, but still feel pretty good about that. But the way Washington was going to win this was they were going to score on every possession and just hope that their defense stopped enough to win the game. And they basically did that. Daniels was brilliant. There's no other way to put it. Jaden Daniels was absolutely brilliant. The use of his legs, his throws were what they needed to be. That whole he can make every throw. Well, he can make every throw. And his like I said, his use of his legs, and it's the composure. It's 4th and 2. You're on the road playing the number 1 team in the conference. You're a wild card team. You're a rookie. 4th and 2. Yeah, I'll run to the outside. Got a first down. Well, no doubt about it. 4th down. All right, yeah, I'll pass that one off to Zach Ertz. 3rd down. We'll keep these chains moving. Keep this thing rolling. Season on the line. Game on the line. Postseason. Let's roll. Big pass. Completed for a touchdown. He was just completely unshakable this whole game. It was a delight to watch him play the quarterback position in that way. And then you have a game plan that keeps them aggressive. And I love this from an underdog. A lot of times in football, you will have a team where, okay, we are obviously not as good as they are. And I think when you look at Washington and Detroit stacked up, given the injuries to Detroit on the defensive side of the ball, I don't know if you could say, okay, Washington is clearly worse than Detroit. Certainly not 9.5 points worse, but they're clearly worse than Detroit. But a lot of times when you have a team that is like clearly worse and like more significantly than Washington was more the point I was trying to make, they will try to, okay, let's limit the amount of possessions in this game. Let's drag the clock down. Let's just get any points we can. Let's just chip away at it. Hey, look at this. We're up, like we got 2 red zone possessions. We had to kick a couple field goals, but hey, it's 6-0. Oh, it's 14-6 now and it's over. How many times did that happen against the Patriots? How many times did that happen against Kansas City? Where the underdog goes in, you know what? We're gonna run the ball. We're gonna take 35 seconds every play, and we're gonna kick field goals, and that's how we're gonna win this game. Is we're just gonna keep accumulating points, and we're gonna be there at the end, and we'll make a play. That was not Washington, and also that doesn't work. You do not beat teams better than you with field goals. This is how you do it. Washington. Take note, every other team, when you're in almost double-digit underdog, fucking Texas tonight against Ohio State, you're a double-digit underdog, this is how you do it. You are aggressive all the time, and you put that pressure on them. You are not going to win these games kicking field goals. You are going to win it with big plays on 4th down and aggressive plays and 7 points, not 3 points. And they did that. They stayed aggressive, exactly how you need to play it. I thought the offensive line was great. I do think that's more a Detroit pass rush thing than a Washington offensive line thing, but they gave Daniels tons of time. Robinson, Eckler, and then McNichols at the end, plenty of room to run their way in. And then like Terry McLaurin making big play after big play and really kind of solidifying himself as a top receiver in this league. The defense got gashed. There's no question about that. But they came up with big turnovers at the big times to kind of seal it away. So they just came up with enough big plays. That was the difference, really. Their defense came up with big plays and Detroit's couldn't. On the Detroit side of things, Jared Goff, a couple tough throws that you can't have. And like the one interception of the end zone at the end of the first half, it's tough. He's sliding away from some pressure, and then there is something going on by his legs, so he can't fully extend into the throw, and that affects it by, let's say the width of a human, and boom, right into the defensive back's hands, and it's an interception. But the throw on that first interception where he just sails it over his guy's head and it ends up in a pick six, like it's a misread. You have Laporta underneath, and it's fine if you want to push the ball down the field a little bit more. If you think you have that, then fine, but you have to make that throw. And I think he realized as he was making it, it's not really there. There was a defensive back who undercut it, and so I think that got in his head a little bit, and he corrected, sails it over my guy, and it gets intercepted, and back it goes. Just some throws you can't make. Brutal turnovers end up costing them this game. Like that Williams double pass, you just can't make that mistake when in that situation where they basically needed to score on every possession that they had to stay in that game. You cannot screw that up in that way. And that I'm not saying that was the one that cost them, but turnovers really did cost them. Otherwise, like offensively, they were great. Jahmyr Gibbs had I thought like took another step in this game into elite running back territory. And a big part of it too was the offensive line. They were opening up holes all game. The thing you really like about this Detroit team, when you talk about like building a culture and setting a tone and stuff like that, you can see that it's been done in Detroit because of how well this team blocks down the field, getting those extra 10, 15, 20 yards, and sometimes more than that because your receivers are blocking downfield. Your offensive linemen are getting to that second level and making big blocks and just making life a whole lot easier for your running backs there. Defensively, they couldn't contain Daniels at all. They couldn't get any pressure on him, and they couldn't keep him in the pocket whatsoever. They just had nothing for him all game. And that's where, like, that's where the injuries come in, right? And it sucks that you have a team that was this good and have the injuries ruin it like they did for them. And then, like, secondary, that they couldn't tackle, they really couldn't cover. They just, at this point in the year, given where they were at, they're a bad defensive team now. And it sucks. But this is like one of those things, and it's why I hate the asterisk conversation with the Raptors. Anyway, it's part of it. The other part of it is I'm favorite team. But even when they were talking about like the Celtics, and it's like, okay, well, bit of a weak path to the NBA Finals for them. It's like, okay, that's part of it. Like there are going to be teams that get injured. Part of winning a championship, whether it is the 82-game grind for those guys, the 162-game grind for those guys, or in football, the 22 weeks or whatever it is that you have to survive through where you're having 50 car crashes a game. Part of winning a championship is people staying healthy and just either having the depth or having the luck or whatever it is to survive through all of that and win a championship. And sometimes injuries are going to be a part of it, and sometimes those injuries are too much. And unfortunately, that's what was the case here for Detroit. I don't think there's a window closing or anything like that, but they are going to lose a significant amount of brain power this offseason, with Ben Johnson leaving as the offensive coordinator and Aaron Glenn probably leaving as defensive coordinator to head coaching jobs. I thought that Johnson was brilliant in this game with the play calling, all the misdirection plays until the end, obviously, with the interception thrown by Williams. But I thought he was unbelievable. As a Raider fan, watching it with the obvious Tom Brady hanging over everything, and how much he was gushing about the play calling, come on. But it's easy to dream if you are a Raider fan or a fan of any of these teams. You can see why he is like so wanted by Chicago and these teams with young quarterbacks and offensive problems, because he there's a lot of really fun things that you can do. And like they obviously have high level talent in Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs, but like Jared Goff is a good quarterback and better than we thought. But I don't know if he's this good with this offense. And like the rest of the guys around that, this isn't a team just overflowing with unbelievable amounts of talent. They got good players and a very, very good system. We'll see how that hangs around. And the mentality that Glenn brought to the defensive side, I think that's going to stick around with Dan Campbell. But he was able to coach up that defense really well against Minnesota a couple weeks ago. I don't think this will hurt him that much because most people will just, injuries. That's why. And that'll be it. But obviously, a significantly quicker end to the season for Detroit than they would have thought. And they're going to be back, and they're going to be really good next year. But they got some brain power that they're going to have to replace there. We move on. Houston taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, as the Chiefs are once again off to the AFC Championship game for what feels like the billionth time in a row with what ends up being a 9-point win over the Houston, I think 9-point win, right? Something along those lines. They beat the Houston Texans in the AFC AFC divisional round here. Deed's asking about it. When you get there, did those two Texans penalties for roughing the passer really derail their chances of winning, like some are saying? No, I don't think they did. Obviously they didn't help at all. The one roughing the passer, like the helmet to helmet thing, it was close. And any high hit on a quarterback around, the face, especially with that guy, they're going to call it, right? And it's people, it's Mahomes gets a special treatment. And yeah, I mean, probably, maybe. I don't think it's unwarranted. He's the best quarterback in the league. And so that there's going to be a little bit of extra attention paid on the contact on that particular fellow. I don't think it is a Kansas City bias or anything like that. The NFL prints money. If you're telling me if Houston played Detroit in the Super Bowl, that the NFL would be crying poor and no one would watch it. No. The NFL's going to be fine. They don't need to rig shit. Also, have you seen them? They have a multi-billion-dollar product, no thanks to themselves, and they screw it up often. They're just too big to fail. So I guess maybe that's a counter to my argument, but I don't think they're smart enough to rig anything. Personally. So I don't think that there is this bias or anything like that. The second one was not a penalty. Like, it's the two guys crashing into each other. They don't hit Mahomes at all. You could, when you watch the slow-mo, you can make a slightly compelling argument that Mahomes had already given himself up by the time the guys were diving, but they do ultimately miss him. So that shouldn't have been a penalty. But that didn't cost them this game. Refereeing, in my opinion, almost never costs the team a game. It was too many sacks on Stroud and too many times where they just couldn't execute on third down and too many drives, especially early in the game. What did we talk about before? You don't beat the Kansas City Chiefs kicking field goals. Houston couldn't finish off their drives and get touchdowns when they needed to, and that is what ended up costing them. Did those penalties get in the way a little bit? Sure, probably. But that is not what ended up costing this team this game. It was an inability to really move the ball and keep drives rolling. And you can understand why, right? Like, Nico Collins is a beast, and he made a couple of really great plays in this game. And Hutchinson and Mechie and Schultz all had moments, but they just couldn't get open. And so because of that, Stroud has to hold on to the ball for forever. And what happens when you hold on to the ball for forever? You get hit very hard by the other team. And that's what happens. They didn't have the game breakers to get open against a really good Kansas City defense. And we talked about it early in the year. What does Kansas City do better than almost everyone? They take away that number one passing option. They can, and you could see it, Collins was double teamed for a lot of that game. It's fine, if you're going to beat us, Mechie's going to beat us. Or Hutchinson or Schultz is going to beat us. It ain't going to be that guy. We're going to lock two guys on him, and we're going to make these dudes try to get open. And they couldn't. And they made a couple of good plays at different times, but not enough of them. And so Stroud is just left there holding on to the ball the whole time, and he just took some bad sacks at bad times. And it didn't help him. So that to me, that's why. It was again, the injuries to Dell, the injuries to Diggs, where they just didn't have another guy to go out and get open in a 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 situation when they have two very good defenders all over Nico Collins. Other part of this game, like George Karlaftis was a beast in this one. Like we talk about Milano, he had an excellent game. Verse had a really good game for the Rams too. Like there were a few kind of like level up performances in the NFL postseason here this weekend with like Karlaftis, what he was able to do in this game. Anderson was excellent as well, and a game wrecker. I thought he kind of had a level up type of a performance, and talked about before, like with Verse, he does as well. And Milano, like we knew about him for a long time. Like this isn't anything new, but I think that was one of the best games that he played. We had some really, really strong defensive performances this weekend. And then for Kansas City, like on the offensive side, talk about making big plays when you need to. They did that. The offense made big play after big play when they needed to. Hunt gets a couple of big runs in this game. Kelsey wakes up from his slumber now. Worthy makes a phenomenal play on the sidelines. Like they had more guys making more plays than the Houston Texans did. They hung around as long as they could. The defense played well, but in the end, it was just a couple too few playmakers on the offensive side. So we're set up now. It is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs against the Buffalo Bills and the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Washington Commanders in the Super Bowl semifinals coming up this weekend. We have a lot to talk about with those as the week goes on. Going to look a little bit more in depth at what these conference finals mean on Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to have the offseason preview for the teams that lost, plus the upset specials. And on Thursday, we'll have the full game breakdowns for this one. So that is the schedule coming up for the week. Some other stuff in the world of sports this week as the Toronto Blue Jays. When we left on Friday, a couple of breadcrumbs that, hey, the Blue Jays might go out and sign this Roki Sasaki. And then a couple hours after the podcast is done, hey, look at that, he's an LA Dodger. And the Jays miss out on another one. But that would not be the case today as the Toronto Blue Jays make a signing, bringing in Anthony Santander. Does it help? Let's talk about it. The Toronto Blue Jays finally have a free agent signing, an impact one, as they sign Anthony Santander to a 5-year contract with a bunch of different options and a bunch of different opt-outs for a whole lot of money, upwards of $90 million. The Blue Jays, to use the baseball term, struck out in free agency on Ohtani and Soto and Roki Sasaki, but they now have at least some impact in their lineup this season as they bring in Anthony Santander. So firstly, for the Blue Jays, it's nice that someone said yes. Like they get Turner last year, but that was where else is this guy going to go? And he's kind of at the end of his run. This is a guy who is legitimately going to spend the last part of his prime with the Toronto Blue Jays and decided that was a thing to do. I will say there is a little bit of hesitancy on my part that it took so long when the Jays were the front runners the whole time. Like it does kind of feel like a couple of these guys happen with Burns, and then he leaves for Arizona. Whereas like the Blue Jays have the best offer. They have the best offer. Okay, why isn't it done? Takes another offer from somewhere else. Santander, they had the best offer, and he's sticking around. So what does Anthony Santander bring to the Toronto Blue Jays? Well, apparently part of the contract, toxic messaging in the chat here, Ben Nicholson-Smith just tweeted that there are heavy deferrals in the deal, which is the new thing, apparently, in Major League Baseball, is we're just going to kick this can down the road. Personally, I would think with the advent of like high interest savings accounts and stuff like that, I would want to have that money now, and we can just, put the interest rates and whatever. But I mean, look, they're all better at their money than I am, because I mean they make a lot of it. So, but still, you would assume that it seems weird to me. Anyway, but heck of a retirement plan, heck of a pension to be able to manage that. So for Anthony Santander, just pulling up his baseball reference now, he had not the best batting average season last year at .235, but 44 home runs and 102 RBI. He has an OPS plus of 134, which for those not necessarily into the fancy stats, that means that he was 34% better than the average hitter in baseball last season based on that metric. It's his worst batting average season in the big leagues at all, aside from the 100 at bats that he had in 2018 as a 23-year-old. He is 29 right now. He will turn 30 by the time, or sorry, he is 30 now. He turns 31 in October. It's something the Blue Jays lineup didn't have. And it's something that they were built assuming that Vladdy would be that, is a guy who can just hit the ball out of the ballpark. They have a few guys who are slap the ball around, get on base guys. They didn't have, like, what I think they thought Vladdy was going to be was just bomb home run guy. And because they didn't have that, you have to work really hard to score runs. And sometimes it's just nice to have a guy in the middle of the lineup who can just hit the ball out of the ballpark. And now you have that with Santander. 44 home runs last year. He's actually had like 3 really good seasons in a row here for the Orioles. OPS plus of 120, 121, and 134. Our home run totals of 33, 28, and 44. RBI totals of 89, 95, and 102. That's also playing at Camden Yards, where they moved the fence back a lot out in left field. And for a switch hitter, like around half of his at-bats, he's going to be facing that way in that ballpark. And so Rogers Center, a little bit more home run friendly for him, I would assume. So I think that this is going to help out. Also, as Toxic said, known Blue Jays killer. He did seem to beat up on the Blue Jays a pretty good amount here. And so that doesn't hurt, getting him away from the opposition. But no, this is the exact type of batter that the Toronto Blue Jays needed in the middle of their lineup. And so now, when you look at what this team potentially could look like here going into next season, this is the lineup right now. George Springer leading off. Vladdy, I would put number 2. I think we are at a point in 2025 where you want your best hitter hitting second so that they get the most at-bats possible throughout a season. At 3, I would put Santander. Bo Bichette batting in the cleanup spot. I think he's still got the power to be able to do that. Dalton Varsho batting 5th. Alejandro Kirk 6th, Will Wagner 7th, Andres Jimenez batting 8th, and Ernie Clement batting 9th. For those who are watching right now, you can see that there's some nice, if you wanted to flip Clement and Jimenez, nice little lefty-righty symmetry that you can get going on there. Now, that's not as important now that lefties have to stay in the games for 3 batters, and sometimes it can actually sometimes help if they line it up right, and then you get a lefty into an inning and they only have to face one right-handed batter. But still, I think that it is still something that can help you out a little bit. And it's also a versatility in a lineup that they never really had before with that amount of lefties that you feel okay in. Jimenez isn't going to, I don't think, light the world on fire with his bat. But Wagner, I think, is interesting as a DH. Also on the bench, it's Schneider, Straw, who they just acquired. Another Jimenez. And Heineman as their catcher. So there is some growth potential with this offense. Like, this is, even with just one guy, this is a better offense than it was a season before. But as Toxic is saying in the chat, one more bat would make this lineup just look so much better. I think as it is constituted right now, this is the lineup of a team that is battling for the last wildcard spot in the American League. That's basically what I see right here. But let's say, and I like Wagner. I think you switch, Wagner playing third maybe this year. You get Alonso there, right? Like, let's just dream as big as you can with what's left in the free agent market. You get Alonso there in that DH spot. He moves up to 4. I maybe should have crafted these. You get him up to 4. Put Bo Bichette as the number 5 hitter, and then you're leading things with Springer, Vlad, Santander, and Alonso, with then Bichette, and it just kind of bumps everyone down. You feel great about that. Also, Bregman, I think, I feel like Bregman might get an overpay, and I don't know how well that's all going to age. Like, he's not an old dude, but it's a lot of baseball miles, so to speak. But you put him at 3rd, and then you can have him batting 5th behind these guys, and just kind of move everyone down. Like, it feels like everyone is about one spot in the order too high for this team to really go out and make a big splash. Now, if they get both those guys we're talking about, then we're talking about a team like, okay, we can maybe get a good wild card spot. Like, I still don't think they're competing with the Yankees this year. But this is, you can at least see in that lineup there that there is at least some potential that this team could be maybe a little bit better than we thought. Or certainly better than what we saw from them a season ago. They still need another bat to really, I think, round that out, like we were saying. Just to kind of round out this little mini team preview we got going on with the Toronto Blue Jays right now. Here is the pitching rotation. You have Gausman, Barrios, Bassett, Bowden France, and Yariel Rodriguez right now as your top five. Manoah, he had Tommy John or UCL surgery. That happened in June or July last year. So he is probably out until the back part of the season. And then I would imagine just as a long relief guy. And then in your bullpen right now, you have Hoffman, Green, Garcia. They also have Swanson and then Brendan Little as the left-handed pitcher. I would like at least one more lefty in that bullpen. We've talked about it before. I would love one more closer dude in the back end there. If you're able to have Hoffman be your 8th inning guy, and either Yimmy or Green be your 7th inning guy, and then have the other one and Swanson as your middle relief, you feel great about that. Minter just signed. Minter signed with the Mets, I want to say. But like a guy like that would have been good. Yeah, like the one that obviously comes to mind is who the Yankees got in Devin Minter. That would have been great. Yeah, the Mets signed AJ Minter, and the other one who we're going to talk about in a sec is Tanner Scott. That would have been phenomenal. Would have been the missing piece, I think, for that bullpen. And the starting rotation, again, it feels like it's a guy away, doesn't it? Like it would be great if Yariel or Francis could go into the bullpen as a long relief guy. And you have Gausman, Barrios, Bassett as a 4, and then like a Francis and whoever, but like a Scherzer or someone along the, like a real legitimate at this point number 3 would feel good. So it just, everything we look at there, whether it's the starting rotation, the bullpen, or the lineup, they all feel like they are one guy away from being able to make a real splash, and being one guy away from being a real competitive, strong baseball team right now. But they're getting closer at least, and that is what feels pretty good from a Blue Jays perspective. Now, it could have been a lot better if a couple free agency things maybe went their way, but instead they went the Dodgers' way. Let's talk about that. So, the LA Dodgers have just added to their embarrassment of riches this offseason as they go out and acquire Roki Sasaki, the starting pitcher from Japan at 23 years old, to be just an absolute star in the rotation. They were not done there, signing Tanner Scott to round out the bullpen for the Dodgers. Again, for the LA Dodgers, it is the rich getting richer. And a lot, bad for baseball, blah, 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 blah. They got the money, they're going to spend it. I have no problem with it. I've talked before about how I think, big spending is back in baseball. And you love to see it because they're allowed to. You love to see these guys getting paid. And it's just, I have no problem with it. And I wish my team was the one who was doing it. But now for the Dodgers. Roki Sasaki apparently favors a 6-man rotation. The 6-man rotation for the Dodgers is insane. It's Blake Snell, who they signed in free agency, remember, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, Tony Gonsolin, Roki Sasaki, and Dustin May. Like, good grief. That is an unbelievable rotation. The fact that you can roll with 3 or 4 of those guys in the playoffs, and then, we're going with a bullpen day with Sasaki, or we're just going to go to Roki Sasaki in the 8th inning of this game and try to shut this thing down that way. Then in the bullpen, you have Tanner Scott, lefty, by the way, talking about that from a Blue Jay standpoint, would have been nice, but you have Tanner Scott as, they have 3 guys, on roster resource right now, they have 3 guys listed as a closer. Tanner Scott, Michael Kopech, and Blake Trinan. That 7, 8, 9 is absurd. And then you have like Anthony Banda, who is, I think, a pretty solid lefty as well. They've put together an unbelievable team. Toxic saying you could argue Dodgers' sixth man is better or at least as good as the Blue Jays' ace. I mean, yeah, like Dustin May, really strong. Injuries have kind of slowed him up a little bit, but at 27, like you can make a case. I think pretty definitely you can make a case. And oh, by the way, none of this is factoring in that maybe Shohei might be able to pitch next year. Like, and then offensively, like this is the lineup right now. Shohei, Betts, Freeman, Hernandez, Max Muncy, Will Smith, Michael Conforto, Tommy Edman, and Hae-Sung Kim, who they can platoon with at some point if they want to. They have Austin Barnes, Miguel Rojas, Chris Taylor, and Andy Pages on the bench right now. Until today, Chris Taylor would have been in the starting lineup for the Blue Jays, and even then he still might be if he were to play on there. And he is firmly planted on the bench on this Dodgers team. They are one of the best built baseball teams in the history of the sport, and they continue to do that with big signing after big signing. Now, the one thing about it is they still kind of have to be, because you look at the competition right now. The Mets are obviously going for it, right? Like they go out and make a couple of big splashes. They have like a top of the order of Lindor, Soto, Vientos, who took a step last year, and then Nimmo. The rest of the lineup, like McNeil, I thought took a step back last year. He was fine, and then the starting rotation, like it doesn't quite stack up. But Minaya, Senga, if he stays healthy, that's a big boost for them. Montas, Clay Holmes, bullpen, they just added Minter, so you got a pretty good 8-9 there with Edwin Diaz if he can get back to form, and AJ Minter. So like you're not just lapping the field or anything like that. The Phillies still have, I think, the best 1-2 starting punch in baseball. The Diamondbacks, who are in their division, just added Corbin Burns and now can roll out 3 of the best pitchers in baseball in their starting rotation in any given series. And then you look at the Yankees, who have followed up on missing Juan Soto by putting together a very good baseball team, by holding on to Chisholm, bringing in Goldschmidt, who I think will be whatever, but also bringing in Cody Bellinger. Like right now in the lineup I'm looking at, Giancarlo Stanton's hitting 6th. That lineup is good. Starting pitching-wise, they add Max Fried, and another pitcher would have been great for the Blue Jays. But now they're, like, Carlos Rodon, I don't know how much I trust him, feel fine with him as a number 3. And Heel, again, maybe a couple of concerns, feel great about him as a number 4. And then they add Devin Williams to the bullpen. They trade for Fernando Cruz, and so they're locked up. So the Dodgers free agent spending spree, as always, it feels comical because it's just an absurd amount of money that they spend all the time. But they are doing it in part because they have to, because there are a lot of very good teams out there in Major League Baseball right now. This was going to be the finish of the stick and ball portion of the show today, but we have some news from the world of football. So we're going to hit the talking football video again. Going to leave it all in. We were talking a bit before about, Ben Johnson. Raider fan, would love to have him. Boy, that would be great. Would absolutely love to see that go down. Adam Schefter tweeting out, bear down. Chicago is finalizing a deal to hire Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson as its new head coach. So Ben Johnson on his way to the Chicago Bears. I think this move makes a ton of sense. I mean, you look at like taking away from a division rival and bringing it to yourselves. That is huge for the Bears. Just getting some of the institutional knowledge for the Bears and figuring out what the Lions are doing there. I think you get one of the more creative play callers in the league, and someone who, as much as they could show from an offensive coordinator standpoint, showed to be one of the next kind of good minds in football on the offensive side with what he has been able to do so far. And so I think this move makes a lot of sense, and it makes the Bears a really interesting team going into next season. This was the guy they needed to have. You go out, you draft Caleb Williams, number 1. You add Roma Dunze as his wide receiver, and then you add a couple of more guys, like DJ Moore's going to be there. Keenan Allen, we'll see. You add a running back around him, and it works out that way. Instead but now you need to solidify him with a coach who knows what he's doing. And you bring in a Ben Johnson to do that. I think this is the hire for the Bears. This was the one that could move the needle for them the most. It's great. And then you talk about like building a culture. Ben Johnson has just seen what Dan Campbell can do with that and the importance of doing that. And so now he is going to be able to implement those kind of practices and bring it over to the Chicago Bears. So I think this makes the most sense right now for them. For the other teams who are out there searching right now, like the Vegas Raiders is the one that I focus on the most as a Raider fan. This is a bit of a blow because that was a guy who, like I said, I thought could be a game changer. And I thought could be a guy who could really go out and like alter the course of your franchise. They don't get him. The one now at the top of my wish list, and I don't know how available he'll be. Also, I said Texas, Ohio State earlier in the podcast. I know it's not them. It's Notre Dame. And it's their coach, Marcus Freeman. He has somehow, some way found a way to make Notre Dame likable, which is interesting. And the job that he has done with the Fighting Irish out there in turning that program around, I think that could be a very interesting guy to bring in and try to be the next college coach to turn things around. So a big domino falls in the coaching search today. Also, there was one other bit of news as the Indianapolis Colts are hiring former Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo as their defensive coordinator. So I think that is an intriguing one. It's a bit of a tough landing spot, I think, for Anarumo, who is looking to build up his reputation after the Bengals defense was ass this year. And he goes to a Colts team that I don't think has a ton of talent on the defensive side, but they were very bland and pedestrian a season ago. And so I think getting a little bit more creativity in there is going to be good for the Indianapolis Colts, but they need some horses there now. Pardon the pun. So a couple of coaching moves, rounding out the sportsy portion of Couch Potato Diary today. Podcast is going to be in two parts. We're just wrapping up part one with a lot of football talk and some baseball in there. Part two, we're going to be looking at boxing, going to be looking at the UFC, and going to be looking a whole lot at the WWE. So it's a combat split here on Couch Potato Diary. Probably going to be doing that a little bit more now. So for podcast listeners, the rest of the fighting stuff, that is coming up in part two of the show.